In today's talk, I want to speak about karmic debt. Karmic debt is something that we usually owe someone else, or they owe us. It is part of our contract that we make to come back and pay the karma. When I first started the work, I really didn't know anything. I couldn't remember. And I had a friend who was there at the time of my accident, and she all of a sudden could channel, and she told me that I'd saved her in another life, and now in this life she'd been brought in to help me through this phase of my life. Both of us knew then that she was repaying the karmic debt, and she would continue to work with me until the karma was paid. The karma usually has a kind of a life, like a time. So if you've got to burn the karma, it will just go as long as it goes. And then after that, you have free will. I've read people who are in relationships, the relationship's still going, but I would read that 6 months ago, the karma was actually burned, and then you're free to leave. So there's a lot of freedom within karmic debt in some ways. There's also another karmic debt, which is, I call the sacred karmic debt. This debt was made with spirit. So you said that you would come back and do the service work or do a particular venture, and you've made that with spirit. It's different to making it with a human. It's something that your soul does. The sacred karmic debt is really a spiritual promise. I feel that it's a very powerful debt to have, in the sense that once you've made it, you really should stick to it because it's made on such a high level. When I crossed, I was allowed to come back, but I was only allowed to come back because they told me what I was supposed to do. I was told that it would be hard, but if I could stay on that side or not, I decided to come back. And then the journey began. I'd almost forgotten why I was here, I suppose, and I was reminded. I still had free will, however, to come back or not, in the sense of I could come back if I paid it. But in my case, I know that I couldn't come back and not pay it, and I would have to stay on the other side. That would be the end of my life. I felt in the first 3 weeks I could have died anyhow from the accident, in terms of the fact that I could just feel the blackness around me, and then that lifted. Sacred karmic debt is a good debt to have, in a sense, because you're going to help mankind, whether you're going to do an invention or you're going to actually help people, or in my case, do this kind of work and bring the knowledge back into the forefront so people can remember it. Because we do all know these things, we just haven't quite remembered them, and sometimes we get nudged by different situations or circumstances. Paying your debt back is good. It will just go with you everywhere from life to life if you don't pay it back. It sort of follows you around. We usually choose groups of people who we have the debt with. Maybe one life we might decide to do back 3 or 4 paybacks. Another life we might do 6. Another life we might only do 1. How big the payback is really makes a difference. I know someone whose mum got dementia. The brother was fairly hopeless at looking after her, and the lady gave up her teaching career to be with her mother. She felt it was her duty. She was paying the karma back to her mum, stay with her mum until her last breath. And there was nothing that would make her put her in a nursing home, nothing that would change the situation, that she had to be there from the beginning to the end with her mum. She knew it. She knew she was paying it back. And actually, when I bumped into her at the supermarket, I remember saying to her, "You're paying back the karma that your mum has done for you in other lives." People will also pay karma back to us. It's important that you realise that people pay karma back to us and don't block it. We can tend to be very independent and want to do it all ourselves, but we actually get in situations where we actually need support, and then it's important to allow the person to pay their karma back, because then we can clean the slate. If you do not let them pay it back, then it gets very awkward, because then it gets like a hangover karma and will have to be done at another time. The karma can be paid quite quickly, or it can take decades. It really depends on what the situation was that you were in. Karma doesn't always have a bad feeling around it. People, when they hear the word karma, tend to go, oh no, not karma. But we've brought it to ourselves for certain reasons, and within those there's a lot of growth. So, for example, if we have a son or a daughter who tends to look after us because in another life we helped them, they learn those lessons, they learn what love is, they learn how to take care of people and nourish the relationship, maybe even financially or spiritually or time-wise. There are lessons within karma, and it's good that we understand that. So it's not just paying the karma back, but the whole growth in our spirituality, making ourselves better people. There can also be karma with groups of people. So a group of people who may be ostracised or were cruel to somebody, maybe in a village past lives ago, now come back into that person's life, and now they have to pay the karma back by supporting that person in some way to make retribution. Karma is like a give and then a take, and to balance it you need to allow the give and then the take. The way people view karma in this world is actually more narrow than I think it actually is. It has very many different dimensions within it. I wouldn't say I understand it all, but I do know when it's karma, I'll get a sense around it, and I keep myself out of it, like don't interfere. I know once I wanted to send a lot of healing to a young man who'd been in a terrible bike accident, and he was in bed, he was paralysed initially from the neck down, very, very ill, almost on death's door. And I went to send healing, and I was told, no, you can send love and light, but you're not to send healing, because this was a karmic life he was having. So he was actually paying back. He had to pay his karma, and he had this accident. But then the good part about the accident was that he landed up becoming a spokesperson and very skilled at helping other people and actually warning people about drinking and then driving. In his case, riding motorbikes. So if he hadn't had that incident, he wouldn't have done the next part of his soul growth. For his parents and family, of course, it was devastating, but he remains now and plays basketball and I think some other sports. So I wasn't allowed to interfere with the karma. It's bigger than us, karma. It's a much more spiritually based work. It's arranged in the Garden of Remembrance before we came down, and that's why we'll end up in situations where we can't even believe that we got into this situation, and why did I do that or choose this person? Because if we hadn't have, we couldn't have burned the karma or done the karma. If you look back on your life, you will see the karmic payback and not. When it's paid back, it usually has a feeling of completion. Sometimes the relationship actually ends. For example, there can be a karmic situation where certain children are supposed to be born with certain parents. I know someone who did IVF, and as soon as she got pregnant and the child was born, within a year the relationship dissolved, because the karmic thing was that that child was supposed to be with them, and then the karma was burned. So they'd both done their part, and then they moved on to another life. Karma is something you will have in your life. Every single person has it. Every single person is dealing with it. The loss of money is a big one too. And people lose a lot of money sometimes. That's a karmic, well, I suppose payback in a way, or balancing, so we know what that feels like. I had a situation where I bought a ticket for one of my sons to go overseas. Actually, it was a lot of money for us at that stage, but it was important. And then I changed travel agents in the middle, and then there was the big crash, and we lost all the money. And I was fairly annoyed about that, and a bit angry with Spirit, because it's like, what the hell? And I tuned in and was told you needed to experience what it felt like to lose the money, like to have that experience. So when I read, or just in general life, I understood what that was like. And then it was interesting because later on, the government or somebody, I don't know who they were, they came back and they paid back the people who'd lost that money. There must have been some backup insurance. And we got a cheque for almost the same amount of money. So it was actually remedied. But I went through that whole process of being on the phone when the lady told me lost all the money and just got off the phone feeling quite numb. These they are small karmic things, but we would have set that up to learn from it. Enjoy burning your karma. I always think it's a good thing to burn good karma. And sometimes we are doing it almost now as a free will, like you have a choice to be like this to that person or not, and you choose to come from love and be a more kind person to them and be tolerant. And you can actually be having your signposts of karma that you need to do this life, but in addition you can have another lot that you run on your own where you just continually keep making good karma, doing better karma. I've just sent a text to someone after I read them and said, you know, her son had died and her son came through and the message was, be good to your partner like the stepdad. He's a good guy and you'll burn better karma, Mum, because you're being a bit mean to him now. So I sent it to her to help her so she burns better karma and she is a nicer person to him. And that came from her son who had passed when he was maybe, I think he passed when he was 20, so it was quite tragic. And he's coming through to tell her to burn good karma. So good luck with your good karma. I think it feels good to karmically do it well. I think it's a nice thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. Actually, it's quite hard because sometimes if you're angry or hurt with somebody, it's actually hard to climb over those emotions, get to the other side and still be good to them. I hope you're having a good week. I hope wherever you are in the world, the sun shines a little bit more for you. And I send you love and light.